Hello everyone, Omniel here with another story from the realm of the dice. Today we are going to look at a story from a friend of someone who had a DM that basically told him that fun is not really important, at least not the player's fun. Let's look at the post. Not my story, but I was the wall for this friend to vent at, and I even got to talk to the DM a few times. And whoo boy, this man is a cryptid of DMing. Most of this was told to me by my buddy, but I will mention when I was present. My buddy, B, and his wife joined a Discord-based campaign with an old friend of theirs whose BF was a dungeon master. He will go by the name Dingus for this story. They heard from some mutual friends that he was a pretty cromulent dungeon master. He had a few successful campaigns before this point, so they were largely excited to play. B got to meet the other players, and it was him, his wife, 3 other mutual friends, one of them being girlfriend's brother, and the last player happens to be Dingus's girlfriend, GF for the story. They didn't think much of it, and had their session 0 where they wrote up all of their characters. Red flag right away, the DM actually made a point to decide for the girlfriend what they wanted to play, and by the end of that she was basically given an edgy rogue archetype. A bit odd, but not the end of the world. It was her first session, so perhaps she just needed help with the rules. Okay, so I can see why this guy thinks this is a red flag right away. Typically, there are very few justifications for why a DM would tell you what to play. Usually it's if you have pre-generated characters for your setup, or, as the guy mentions, if the player doesn't really know anything about it. At least as long as they have the option to switch so that they can play exactly what they want to play, then it should be okay. Let's see what happens. Well, the first session, they got all bright and ready to play, and something terrible was made abundantly clear. The GF would not talk at all. She would only communicate via Discord messages to the DM. So the other 5 players had no idea what she was saying, and the DM refused to make a group chat for her to type in because it's private. Already, that sounds really sleazy and bad. Like, what kind of player would not want to communicate with the rest of the group? Like, how does that even work? That seems really bad. And worse still, the DM constantly let the GF run off and do her own thing while giving the rest of the party peanuts to do. For example, the GF would go off to investigate a house that was attacked and not inform the party. Meanwhile, the party was helping a recently attacked city by finding medicine in the woods. The DM would give them a singular nature check, while Dingus and his girlfriend would message back and forth in private chat for upwards of an hour, leaving the party completely in the dark and with nothing to do other than browse Reddit and be bored. If you're a DM and you pick favorites, I mean, let's be honest, we all pick favorites. You're not supposed to actually let them show in your game, and especially not this blatantly. This kind of favoritism will always ruin games. Always. This continued for another session or 2, and this is when he brought it up for me. I myself am a DM, and told B right away that nope, this is not how it should be. He should communicate with Dingus about his favoritism. He proceeded to do so, and Dingus, of course, gave a bullshit response about how the players aren't engaging enough with his world, and what his GF does away from the party should be private, and by no means should the party have access to that information, so no headway was really made that evening. While I understand that metagaming is often a pretty big issue for some players when you're doing tabletop, it definitely is not something that warrants this type of behavior. This blatant type of behavior where there's clear favorites and the DM sort of keeps them away from the rest of the party. I have to wonder if the girlfriend of this DM is actually okay with this, or if she's been strung on into doing it because she just doesn't know the game any better. Next session, the GF changed characters and Dingus introduced her new one. She was the right-hand wizard of the king himself. She was given a full parade as she returned from a great battle outside of the city, and no matter what the party did, they were not even able to get close to talk to girlfriend's character. They were forced to do missions for the wizard's second in command to even get the chance to talk to her. So the DM's response to, I would like to play a character that is different, is to give her a completely different one that is extremely plot relevant. That's just not how to handle this. That's a terrible take. It was at this point in the story that I was able to meet Dingus himself, and it was a f***ing moment. We were shooting the talking about what it's like to be a DM. I don't get to meet many, so I love having these little conversations to get tips and advice I can apply in my own campaigns. B was there the whole time listening in, and it was relaxed. I was getting a read on this guy, and I'm thinking at this point, love-struck loser who can't disconnect his girlfriend from his game. I would tend to agree. He has had successful campaigns before, so I'm thinking that's gotta be it. So I asked him his philosophy of DMing, and this is what he said. The player's fun does not matter at all. You have a story, and it is their responsibility to follow it 100%, and if they do, you have full power to kill their characters. I could not even process it at that moment, and gave my own take that D&D is a co-op game between everybody at the table and the story, and its direction is just as much theirs as it is the DM's. What did he do? He doubled down. He responded with, player choice should not matter in the slightest, and it is unfair to the DM for the player to break what narrative they have prepared. So I left the call right away, and told B that he was one of the most toxic people I have ever met. Yup, this is not okay. A DM does not get to tell players what to do or how to do it all the time. A little bit of railroading here and there can be useful in certain situations, but to go as far as to say that the player's fun does not matter at all, and that it's their responsibility to follow the narrative, and it's unfair to the DM if they don't, that reeks of a DM that should have just written a book instead of doing a game. At least in my opinion, a DM is supposed to be more of a facilitator, someone who gives the players something to react to, and then the players get to decide where to take it. And then together, it becomes this sort of collaborative storytelling. That makes so much more sense to do than trying to dictate a player's every move. Then you just have a captive audience instead of players. B agreed, and he asked the DM again to tone it down. Of course, nothing happened, so he described to ask GF what's going on. Turns out, she actually wanted to text in general, and Dingus was telling her no. She kept getting pulled into these one-on-one encounters, and she hated them just as much as the other players. So in an attempt to break out of it, she made another character to which the DM responded by giving her the wizard, and she hated that just as much. After this, B left the game alongside basically everyone else, and GF left Dingus very shortly after. B is now running his own campaign for the group, and they're having an absolute blast with it. That's the end of the post. Oh man. It's good to hear that the friend at least is playing a great game now, and I can really admire that they tried to solve this as adults multiple times and not just turn on the DM and walked away, but honestly, the behavior of this DM probably would have had me walk away from the table pretty quickly. On top of that, this sounds incredibly toxic for this guy to basically bar his girlfriend from talking to the rest of the group. I hope that the DM will take this opportunity as a time to reflect on what they did and perhaps become a better person in the future. But that's it for today. If you liked the video, please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you for the next one.